Well, I completely understand the disappointment. No one's more disappointed than us, right? And I know our fans are very passionate about what we do. Unfortunately, we're running into a little adversity right now, and but that happens in life sometimes, and we need to turn that into resiliency, and going to keep battling, and and now we start conference play. Really stiff test going to Boise, obviously. Very hostile environment there against a very good football team. So we got to keep plugging away, right, and keep working and find a way to come out, on top. And so I totally get it. I totally get, disappointment. And like I said, there's no one more disappointed than us. We've let 2 games get away at the very end in the last minute. And so we got to find a way to win those games.
And how would you size up the challenge in front of you this week on the blue turf, a late night game in Boise on Saturday?
Yeah, it's, we've played there quite a few times, and very difficult place to play. It's very noisy. When I say a hostile environment, it's very, very noisy there. San Diego State jumped offside 7 times last week, and I think the previous team 5. And so I was reading something where they lead the nation in opponents jumping off sides there, and so their fans are very into it, and so we're going to have to do a good job of managing the crowd noise and be poised with that, and but they do an excellent job. It's a tough place to play.
Coach, some of that adversity you talk about is in the shape of injuries, missing 5 starters. Are there any updates you can give on where those guys stand this week?
Not as of now. Every day we continue to see how their treatments come in. Hopefully get a guy back or 2, but not quite sure. Probably going to be, another week or 2 before we get some of them back. And they keep kind of mounting, from week to week. We kind of had a lot of guys banged up in the game last week that just kind of got through the game. They I admire them for continuing to play banged up, but it's part of football, and we have to deal with it. And so hopefully this week we can stay healthy in practice. It's always kind of a catch-22 in practice a little bit, because you want to practice really hard, but you really can't afford to get anybody else hurt in practice. And we had a couple guys hurt in practice last week that ended up not playing, so we just have to be very careful about that.
It's also the first trophy game of the season. Historically, how do those affect the team, kind of coming home with something and that hardware, and do you kind of show them anything in the lead up to get them ready for a trophy game?
Yeah, I think it's important that they understand the history and the tradition of the trophy, and so yes, we will talk about that. It's always nice to play for something like that. So it's important for them to understand the tradition behind it.
Coach, we didn't ask you last week about Josh Kelly. I mean, I can't speak for anyone but myself, but I didn't know that he was injured. What is his injury? Because we knew about the other guys, but not him.
Yeah, he has a couple different things. Kind of a chronic knee and ankle, and so he wasn't 100%. It just seemed to be getting worse, and so felt like it was time to rest him. So hopefully he can recover 100%, because he was just all the way back through camp. He's been trying to play, but I think it got to a point where he just couldn't manage anymore.
So he's in that group of day-to-day, week-to-week. You're still not sure if you'll have him for
Correct.
Will the injured guys travel this time? I mean, I know it was different, 3,000 miles, and you left on Thursday last week.
Yeah, maybe a couple of them will. We'll see as the week goes on. Really, last week we left them home so they could get treatment through the couple days here, and but we'll make that determination as we move through the week.
With it being Logan's first start at quarterback, I know that you're going to try and clean up the turnovers and the third down conversions. What's your overall assessment of the way that he played?
He did some good things, and then some other things that, as far as decision making, when it was very unfortunate because the first drive we went down, had an open guy and the ball slipped out of his hand. That was unfortunate. And then the other one was tipped, and then threw one late on the sideline that got intercepted when he was under a little bit of duress. And I think, what's your first game, all the things that are happening around you happen very quickly. It's easy to be in practice and things are happening, but in a game it's totally different, especially for a quarterback, because there's a lot of things going on in the pocket. And so you hope with a game under his belt that he's a little bit more used to that, because I felt like things were happening pretty fast for him. And so hopefully he can settle down a little bit this week.
Do you feel like he was somebody that got caught up in the emotions? Was he able to shake things off and get back out there for the next play next year?
Yeah. I don't think anything. I didn't really notice that he got shook up by something, as far as something that bad that happened. I don't think he took that into the next play. If you take a look, he threw some good balls as well. On the last one on fourth and long, he threw a strike down the middle, right? And unfortunately, we didn't come up with it. But that was a very good ball he threw there, under duress when the game was on the line. So he's a competitor. He's going to continue to compete. But anytime a young quarterback goes in for the first time, there's going to be some growing pains.
Did you consider going with Jalen Henderson at all for a series or two in that game?
No, it didn't feel like the game warranted that, so we never considered that.
So unfortunately, it kind of gets lost in everything with the outcome of the game. But Nico Remigio's punt return, I think, got everybody excited. That's why you brought him here, to be able to do that. What did you see from that play? And when he breaks those 6 tackles at like the 18-yard line, did you think he was going to run that back? That
was an amazing play. First of all, I didn't know if he was going to field it because he had some traffic around him, and then he made the first 2 guys miss, and then after that broke a couple tackles, and everybody else did an excellent job of getting out in front and creating a convoy for him. He's an exciting player, though. He's a gifted guy. Not only as a returner, but he gives his all, whether it be as a receiver, blocking, all those things. He's a very strong competitor.
Do you expect more of that to happen as the season goes? I know he's trying to score every time he touches the ball back there, but does this kind of, maybe change anything mindset-wise that he might be able to break one again later this year?
Well, you hope so. I think that's his mindset every time he goes out there. And it's not just him, really. It's the people around him, too, that have confidence if they do their job to give him a crease that he could possibly make a big play. So whether it be on punt return or kickoff return, kind of both the same thing. You got a lot of other guys, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of bodies flying around. But he has a really good feel for being able to find a seam.
Paul kind of touched upon this about playing at Boise State in this renewed rivalry. Having played this team back-to-back weeks in 2017, you played them twice in 2018. What are your overall thoughts on the rivalry with Boise State? And is this a game, I think I've asked you this a bunch of times before, but a game that you would like to see played every year if possible?
I think it's always been a hard-fought game. I remember back in those days, back whenever it was 17, 18, very tight games. They were low-scoring, tight games. They kind of went back and forth. I think we beat them once here, then they beat us there in the championship game, and then the following year we were fortunate to win in overtime there in the championship game. But it's difficult. They're a great football program. There's no doubt about it. They're very well coached. They're physical. They're fast. They do an excellent job. So you really have to play your best to have an opportunity to win.
And what do you make about their offensive struggles the last couple of weeks? Factor out for a second the San Diego State game. They lost to UTEP. They fired their offensive coordinator. Their quarterback enters the transfer portal. That's a tough 72-hour stretch. Any opinion from you on that?
Well, not really, because I don't know the ins and outs of it. I'm not there. I'm not, in their locker room or behind closed doors. But they seem to bounce back just fine. The quarterback last week did a really nice job. 2 of them played last week. One of them I thought threw the ball well, and And then the other guy got loose on a lot of long runs. He's very athletic, big guy, 6'6", but he can really run. But it's not just them; it's the other guys carrying the ball, and their offensive line did an excellent job. So they're tough to slow down when you have to be alert for all those different facets of the run game when you include the quarterback run as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Green and then George Holani. What challenges do they pose? I mean, how important is it going to be to stop the run on Saturday?
Well, just that, I mean, it's, when you have a quarterback that can run like he can run, you can't commit everybody inside to stop Holani, and because he can pull it out and make you stay disciplined on the perimeter, right? So you can't overrun things. You have to make sure your eyes are disciplined, and then you have to tackle well in space, because not only is he fast, he's big, right, and he's hard to bring down.
Do you see any similarities from the game that you guys just played on Saturday to the Boise State UTEP game from a couple of Fridays ago?
I don't know. I think UTEP was able to hit a big play in the past game, which was similar on the trick play that they got us on, and then they were able to run the ball a little bit, which toward the end we didn't do a very good job of stopping the run in the last couple series. I think there's some similarities there.
Coach, good morning.
Morning.
How important was yesterday for your team? Tell the truth Sunday, and then what do you feel like they got away from yesterday after watching the film?
Hopefully immediately after, because that's really what we talked about, was making sure that we watch that and we clean up the things that we need to clean up. And then, because we have a lot of young players playing, and so there's a lot of learning opportunities there for them. Like with eye discipline, sometimes guys try to do too much, right? So if you have a guy man to man and they play action pass it, and you come up in there to make the run, stop on the run, and then your guy runs by you, you learn not to do that anymore, right? Because it can cost you a big play. And so there's a lot of things like that we could learn from young guys that it's their first year playing, and so there's a lot of lessons, right? So we watched that, but then we got right on to Boise, and I find the easiest way to kind of move forward is to get on to the next opponent. And so yesterday we spent time watching that to learn, and then get a jump on Boise yesterday afternoon.
One of those young players was the starting right tackle, right? You talked about after the game the offensive line suffered some injuries, so their struggles on Saturday. Was that more the injuries? Was it after watching the tape some things they did wrong? Just in your opinion, what was the offensive line's problems on Saturday?
Well, it's not just the offensive line. It's a little bit everything, in some pass protection, because everybody's responsible for pass protection, be it tight ends, running backs, whatever it may be. But we had some guys banged up that were continuing to play because we really didn't have anybody else, and so they kept fighting. They kept competing. And I think some of it too had a little bit to do with Logan's inexperience of just pulling his eyes down, where maybe we had a little bit more time than he felt. But like I said, when it's your first go round, and take nothing from UConn, because they were big and physical up front, and they were getting after it, and their linebackers could really run, and so it was moving pretty quick.
And talking about Logan, you say he did some things you liked and some things to learn from. Is it still his job this week, or is Jalen Henderson going to be considered for the starting job on Saturday?
Well, they'll both practice through the week like they did last week, and we'll see how the game plan shakes out. But every week, both of them get fairly equal reps, just because we need to make sure that the backup's ready to go as well, whoever that may be. But Logan is a starter right now.
And last question, earlier you talked about the injuries, and it's not really known right now. Those core four, right? Hayner, Williams, Ray Scott, and Dante Bowe, are they all in the same boat where they're all week to week and not available this week?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And there's a couple more in there too. But yeah, they're all week to week. It's not like any of them have Evan Williams, I don't know if you said Evan, but they're all week to week. None of them had to have major surgery, so they won't be out for the whole season. But anytime you have those type of things, it's going to take a few weeks to recover. And so it just depends how fast they recover from their injuries, and we'll get them back at some time, right? Hopefully sooner than later.
Thank you, Coach.
You're welcome.
Coach, when a game like Saturday occurs, do you consider any significant changes personnel-wise or scheme-wise going into the following week?
Well, each week, depending on your opponent, sometimes schemes change, right, depending on who you're playing. Personnel is always a competitive thing through the week. There's battlefield promotion. Some guy practices great that week and someone doesn't practice as well. Then you can make a change in who's going to start. Last week we had quite a few guys a lot of the backups that were hurt that didn't even get to practice. But some of them were able to be ready to play in the game. But it's hard to play in a game when you don't practice, right? It's very difficult to do that. And like I said, we had some unfortunate things happen last week during practice that, because we were practicing hard, and some unfortunate things happened where we got dinged up a little bit in practice.
Along those lines, I don't think we saw Gabriel Lightfoot. Was he available?
He was one of them. He was one of the guys in practice that week that sprained his ankle. And so, like I said, if you don't practice through the week, it's very hard to compete in a game. And so he made the trip hoping that maybe at the end he'd be ready, but he wouldn't have been able to. And you have to protect the players too, right? You can't put them out there in a position where they can't protect themselves. And but he was one of the ones who during the week sprained his ankle, and then all of a sudden you have to make an adjustment and have other people step in. So like we've been playing some freshman defensive linemen. Jacob Holmes played last week. Jason Jacks played last week. Sione Noah has played this year. Gabriel's played this year. That's probably 4 right there, freshman defensive linemen that have played.
And what did you think of Holmes going from just a couple of career snaps to starting and forcing a turnover or getting one?
Yeah, I thought he did some good things. He was kind of at the right place at the right time for that ball. But there's a lot to learn. The speed of the game, and that's the other thing. UConn's strength of their team on offense is their offensive line. They're very good. And so, they got a chance to play against some very good guys. And we're just going to improve. Every time out with those type of things, you learn. And, you can practice as much as you want, but nothing's like game time.
What's been the overall assessment of the defense through 4 games and how they're adapting to Coach Coyle's scheme so far?
Well, I think we've been up and down. We've done some good things. I thought we improved in our tackling last week. But, we've let a couple big plays, especially in the fourth quarter, get by us. And we have to shore that up, right? Happened in Oregon State and happened this last week. And so, and a lot of it just, I think guys just trying to do too much. It's not schematic stuff. It's just guys trying to do too much. And sometimes when you're a young, eager guy and you're trying so hard that you have to understand, I just need to do my job, right, and let everybody else do theirs.
And lastly, the last time this program has been to Boise, you were raising up the trophy. Just how special does that moment remain to you?
No, it was great. It was great for those kids. It was a hard-fought game, and our kids had a really good year and played hard against a very good Boise team, and it's a battle right down to the end, and one of the biggest plays in that game that I remember, which is a real testament to effort, was the block extra point, with Boateng coming off the edge. And, sometimes with extra points, people take plays off, but at that point right there, that enabled us to tie the game, because I think it was, it was maybe 13, and the extra point would have put it to 14. And so that effort he made to block that extra point enabled us to go into overtime, right? So I'll never forget that, because that's kind of, everybody sees Ronnie run into the end zone for the touchdown, but really the biggest play of that game, in my opinion, was a block extra point.